What's going on, everyone? This is the McFarland Podcast, where we talk all things Utah Jazz, as well as anything else around the NBA. Thank you so much for tuning in. I appreciate it. And thank you for listening wherever you are. This is the first ever show. So thanks for being here. Like I said, we're going to talk all things Utah Jazz. I currently live in Salt Lake City, Utah. Have been for many, many years. Born here. Just a little bit about myself. Grew up in Northern California. Grew up being a huge Sacramento Kings fan. Still am to this day. I know. Don't feel sorry for me. We're terrible, but that's okay. Probably won't talk a lot of Kings, but I'll definitely slip it in here and there. Like I said, we'll be talking a lot of Utah Jazz and then also just all things around the NBA. So today on the show, we're going to kind of talk about the Jazz, kind of give a little season wrap up and what to look forward to going ahead next year for the season for the Utah Jazz. We'll also talk about the Boston Celtics 108-83 win over the Cleveland Cavaliers, which happened tonight, the night that I'm recording this podcast. We'll talk a little bit about LeBron James's performance and his supporting cast in the game, what we liked, what we didn't like. We'll also talk about, should the Celtics throw their name in the hat for the Kawhi Leonard trade. We'll talk a little bit about that. We'll also give a Rockets-Warriors preview going forward for tomorrow night's game. And then we'll talk a little bit about the NBA draft and is DeAndre Ayton the real deal. So first things up, the Utah Jazz. Obviously, the Utah Jazz were eliminated by the Houston Rockets. Tough series. I don't know too many people outside of people maybe on the Jazz or the Jazz players' parents who picked the Utah Jazz to win the series. In my opinion, the Jazz were really playing with house money at that point. Incredible season. The season was definitely a success. Saw so many positives going into next season. We got to see Donovan Mitchell and what he can do throughout the season. Future All-Star, future star in the making, no question about it. I think most players around the NBA, most coaches around the NBA, GMs around the NBA would definitely admit to the same thing. Obviously in the running for Rookie of the Year, right up there with Ben Simmons. That's a whole different debate, but incredible year for the Utah Jazz. So going forward onto next year, what do the Jazz need and what do I think they should do going forward with their roster? Should they bring back Derek Favors? That type of thing. Obviously the Jazz, like most people know, they need another scorer. Obviously, Donovan Mitchell has been, he's been kind of the main guy to take over the game when that time comes and when they need it to happen. The Jazz need another scorer. That's plain and simple. There's really only one guy on the team who can get his own shot. That's Donovan Mitchell. You can succeed in the regular season having one guy who can really get his own shot. If you're moving the ball well, you've got other shooters and other people who can do some things on the court, play great defense, get put back shots, Rudy Gobert, and things like that. But when it comes to the playoffs and it's a 7-game series and people can really game plan around your team, around your roster, that just doesn't work. That did get the Jazz obviously through the first round over the Oklahoma City Thunder. That's a whole different beast. We're not going to talk too much about that. But in the playoffs, obviously going forward, when you move into the second round, third round, etc., that's not going to work. So I can guarantee the Jazz front office and the coaching staff are definitely looking at who can we pick up, who can we possibly develop. Could a Dante Exum become that type of a scorer for us and moving forward? Those are going to be things that they're going to try to develop. And it's an exciting time for the Utah Jazz. I can't think of a time where the Salt Lake City Valley has been more excited about the Jazz since the Stockton Malone era. No question about that. This team, they love playing together. They pass the ball. They play well. No question about that. So a lot of exciting things coming in the future for the Utah Jazz. Cannot wait to see how Donovan Mitchell and the Rudy Gobert dynamic meshes together going forward throughout the years and things like that. And if you think about it, the Jazz have, Mitchell's on a rookie contract. Gobert's on a pretty salary-friendly contract for the Utah Jazz as well. So they've got flexibility. They've got some room there. Should they re-sign Derek Favors? I think Derek Favors definitely served a good purpose in the playoffs. He did a good job of knowing what his role was, defensive rebounding, offensive rebounding, being the scrappy player, getting the putbacks and things like that, which was huge for the team. He might ask for a little bit too much money, possibly. We're not too sure, but hopefully the Utah Jazz can bring him back. It would be nice to probably have a little bit of a stretch for going forward for the Jazz, but we'll see what happens with that. Definitely an exciting next year coming up for the Utah Jazz. I know the entire Salt Lake Valley is super hyped for what's going on, what's going to happen in the future for the Jazz. So I'm excited too. But anyways, enough about the Jazz. Moving forward, let's talk a little bit about the Boston Celtics 108-83 win over the Cleveland Cavaliers. Kind of my thoughts on what happened throughout the game and kind of the flows of the game. This game was obviously predicated in the first quarter. The Cavs lost this game in the first quarter. They came out flat. LeBron James came out flat. I almost saw it as being one of those Kobe Bryant moments from 10 plus years ago, back when Kobe, you could tell in his head that he wanted to take every single shot because he didn't trust his teammates. This was before the Pau Gasol time and the Andrew Bynum time and things like that. You could tell in his head he wanted to take every single shot, but he knew there's no way he could win an NBA championship without his teammates getting involved. But he wanted to take every single shot. And I could tell LeBron James wasn't trusting his teammates too much. He didn't feel too confident in what his teammates were going to do. He wanted to take every shot, but he knew the only chance he could win this series is if he gets his teammates involved, specifically Kevin Love. And right off the bat, it was obvious he was trying to get Kevin Love involved, trying to get Love the ball on the post and get him to get some shots. And unfortunately, Love's shots just weren't falling. In the first half, there was definitely a point in time where it was pretty much all ISO one-on-one basketball for the Cavs. LeBron would bring the ball up. George Hill would bring the ball up. They tried to give it to Kevin Love. There wasn't a lot of movement. I'm not really sure what the game plan was going into the game. I'm not really sure what Ty Lue was thinking, what type of offense they were going to run, that type of thing. I'm not entirely sure. It didn't seem to be very apparent. Whereas the Celtics, on the other hand, were playing with aggression. They were playing with their backs against the wall. They showed themselves to obviously be the deeper team. And the Cavs continued to do what hurt them all season, which is rely on taking turns offensively. Almost the Oklahoma City Thunder approach, back when Kevin Durant and Russell Westbrook played together. And a little bit we saw with the Oklahoma City Thunder this season as well. It was kind of one of those, here, Kevin Love, it's your turn. Here, LeBron, it's your turn. And then everybody else kind of stands and waits, spots up in the corner and sees what they can do. Maybe you'll get a ball thrown your way. Maybe not. I don't know. So with 5 minutes left in the first quarter, the Celtics made 14 straight shots. And Cleveland was struggling with their shot big time at that point. Like I said, the first quarter is really what predicated the rest of the game. Cleveland looked flat, and LeBron wasn't playing well. He was trying to get his teammates involved, but that just wasn't working. There was a couple points in time where LeBron really just needed to take over the game for at least a couple possessions just to kind of stop the bleeding. The first quarter ended 36-18. The Celtics were up. That's way too little points for the Cavs to score. And then give up on the other end. If you're shooting that poorly, you got to pick it up on the defensive end, and they just weren't able to. So Boston went on a 25-2 run in the first quarter at one point. Jaylen Brown had 13 points, and Horford had 11 points. So incredible first quarter. That really is, like I said, is what predicated the rest of the game for them. Boston shot 64% in the first quarter, and Cleveland shot 32%. Nothing was going for them. So the second quarter was kind of more of the same. Cleveland started off a little bit better. They were still missing shots, but they were definitely playing better defense at that point. They were causing a few turnovers, which kind of stopped the Celtics from even padding that lead a little bit more, which helped a little bit, but there just wasn't much. There was a point in the second quarter that I really wanted to point out. It was about 3 minutes left. Kevin Love goes up for a layup. Jaylen Brown goes up, volleyball swats it away, runs down to the other end, takes a jump shot, hits the jump shot on the other end, and really kind of cemented the confidence I felt like going into halftime and going into the rest of the game. That kind of swagger that the Celtics have, because they're obviously a young team. I saw it kind of, here's an analogy for you. The Celtics at one point were kind of that young, confident kid that comes and plays on a pickup basketball game. Y'all know that kid, the kid that comes in, he's maybe, he's dressed to the T. He's got all the swagger in the world. You can tell that he's probably got some talent, but he's got way too much confidence for how old he is, for not paying the dues that he has. And then you've got the guys on the court already. Maybe, they've won a few games. They're kind of a little bit beefier, a little bit older, but you've got this new kid coming in. And usually the new kid does lose. He gets checked and he realizes, okay, in a couple years, I'll have you guys. I've got the talent, but I need to get gristled a little bit more. But the Celtics are kind of like that outlier. The Celtics are the kid who comes in with the swagger, who is definitely overconfident at one point, but eventually they kind of realize, after a quarter or two, they're like, the older guys are kind of thinking, wait, this kid's actually the real deal. He's not just one of those typical kids who comes in, headband on, way overconfident. This kid might be the real deal. And I think the Celtics, in the first round of the playoffs, I think they definitely thought in the back of their head, no matter how confident they were, we're probably not going to make it too far this year. Our two best players are out for the rest of the season. We're kind of playing with house money at this point, so let's play as hard as we can. Let's try to get some wins. Let's try to kind of get some hair on our chest for the rest of our careers, and learn some things going forward in the next season when we get Gordon Hayward back and Kyrie Irving back and things like that. But I think once we got into the second round and they started steamrolling the Sixers a little bit, the Sixers started making the series a little bit interesting. They took a few punches and gave it back, then ended up winning that series. I think the Celtics at that point realized that, wait, we actually have a legitimate chance of making the NBA Finals and going up against either the Houston Rockets or the Golden State Warriors, which is pretty incredible for a team that is this young. So at that point, there wasn't too much else to say. The Celtics took a 61-35 lead going into halftime. LeBron James only had 7 points on 3 of 8 shooting, 8 shots in the first half. That's just not enough for LeBron James. There's just no ifs, ands, or buts about that. He can't be shooting 8 shots in a first half with this team. With the team with Kyrie Irving and Kevin Love, okay, maybe. With a team with Dwayne Wade and Chris Bosh, okay, maybe. But with this particular lineup, in order for the Cavs to win this series, LeBron's going to have to put up 30-plus points a night and average about a triple-double as well. Another thing to point out, Cleveland made 0 3-pointers in the first half. They were 0 for 12 from 3 in the first half, which for a team that has so many specialists that are only supposed to shoot 3-pointers, that's obviously not going to get the job done, and you're probably going to lose the game just simply in the first half because of that. And the problem is as well with the Cleveland Cavaliers, they don't have a lot of guys who are 3 and D type players. They have a lot of guys who are 3 with no D. Guys like Kyle Korver, J.R. Smith, sometimes can play a little bit of defense, things like that. So that's kind of rough. When you've got other guys who can play defense as well as their 3-pointers, which some of these other teams have, that kind of changes things a little bit. Because if their three's not falling, which happens all the time, you can at least pick it up on the defensive end and try to stop your man. But a little bit hard for these guys on the Cavaliers. So can I just point something out really quick? The fact that LeBron James occasionally shoots your technical free throws when you have Kyle Korver on the floor kind of just epitomizes the Cleveland Cavaliers franchise at this moment. Just think about that for a second. But anyways, moving on. So in the third quarter, Boston kind of took their foot off the gas a little bit. Cleveland made a run for sure, cut the lead down to 14, but the quarter, ended 78-64. Boston's still up. Boston's still with the momentum. But Cleveland kind of nipping at their heels a little bit. They were hoping to cut that lead down to 10. Anyways, fourth quarter, at the beginning of the fourth quarter, it was pretty much over at that point. Boston scored a quick 7 points. They were on a roll. Cleveland called a timeout, and that's pretty much all we had. It was garbage time after that. About halfway through the quarter, they just took everyone out. But my takeaways from the game, looking at some of the stat lines, LeBron James only had 15 points. He had 7 rebounds, 9 assists on 5 of 16 shooting. They struggled. I mean, there's nothing really too much else to say. I don't think the Cavs are going to go into game 2 and play this bad. I don't think they're going to miss this many 3-pointers. It's just not going to happen. So at the very least, the game will be much closer than this. There's no possible way, in my opinion, that the Cleveland Cavaliers are going to play worse than this. Nobody played well, really. I mean, the person who had the best field goal percentage on the team essentially was Tristan Thompson, who only played 21 minutes and had 8 points. He was 4 or 6 from the floor. That's just not going to get it done, obviously. So not too much else to say. I don't think Ty Lue should focus too much on the shots. They missed a lot of open shots. There's not too much you can do about that. They'll fall next game most likely. Really, the point of emphasis, I think, for Ty Lue going forward, the lack of effort on the defensive end, the lack of effort just overall in the game. They look flat from the beginning. I didn't see too much of a game plan. It didn't look like a lot of ISO ball and a lot of flat play. On to the Boston Celtics, though. Let's talk about some of the things that the Boston Celtics did well. The Boston Celtics, they shared the ball. They played hard. Tatum had a little bit of a slow start, came on strong at the end of the game. They shot the ball well. I mean, I can't imagine the Celtics are going to keep shooting the ball that well. They shot 51%, which they could be close to that, but they'll probably be somewhere in the 40s, and then the Cavs will probably be somewhere in the 40s as well. So I expect the game to be much closer game 2, and they should make adjustments going forward. Isn't it crazy to think how different this team is this year compared to the Cleveland Cavaliers last year? It's a whole different dynamic without Kyrie. I mean, you really only have one person that can get his own shot. Kevin Love occasionally can get down in the block and do his own thing, but he's kind of been resorted the last 3 or 4 years to being a spot-up shooter. They've tried to change him a little bit, but it just hasn't been... You haven't seen the Kevin Love from the Minnesota Timberwolves that you used to see, and it's like night and day. How different LeBron has to play, how different the team has to play when he's the only guy who can get his own shot. They played terrible defense throughout the regular season, so it's not really that surprising that they're continuing to play pretty bad defense going forward. And as sad as it is to say, I think the Cavs need to play Tristan Thompson more. I think they're losing a little bit of their edge. They're losing a little bit of that offensive rebounding. Maybe a lineup of Kevin Love and Tristan Thompson, and then the rest of the lineup being standard Kyle Korver, George Hill, and LeBron going forward might be the best lineup for them. But I think Ty Lue has to shake this up from here. This is a big wake-up call, being down by almost 30. I think they were down by 28 at one point. And then, the final stat line of what they lost by is really, it was 15, is really not too much of an indication of how the game went. It was garbage time the last few minutes, so that score was just all over the place. So pretty big blow to the Cleveland Cavaliers going forward, but a LeBron James led team is not going to be knocked down at this point. This is not the 2010 LeBron James. He's going to keep coming back. He's going to rally his troops, and I expect them to make an adjustment in game 2 going forward. So we'll see what happens with that, but pretty incredible performance by the Celtics. All the props to them. Brad Stevens, absolutely incredible job. They came out ready to play, and I can't wait to check out game 2, which I believe is Tuesday. I believe that's Tuesday, so it should be exciting going forward. Let's kind of transition into something else, Celtics related, but a little bit different. So based off of what we've seen so far in the playoffs this year, based off of what we've seen out of the development of the young Celtics players going forward, do you think that the Celtics should throw their name in the hat for Kawhi Leonard if he does become available? Obviously, with the development of Terry Rozier, Jaylen Brown, and Jason Tatum, it's hard to say. It's really, really hard to say. The problem that the Celtics might have going forward is they might have too many good players, and that's a good problem to have. But it's also a problem you do have to work with. Let's say 3 years from now, 2 years from now, a handful of players who could potentially ask for $20 million plus a year. You're talking about Kyrie Irving, Gordon Hayward, Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, Terry Rozier, and Al Horford, who could all potentially ask for $20 million plus a year. That's a good problem to have, and it's been a problem the Celtics have had for a few years now with the several draft picks and just all the assets they've had. But at some point in time, you have to think we can only play 5 players on the court at once. So it might be a better option to package 2 or 3 of these players for 1, maybe 2 assets going forward into the future, because we just can't pay everybody. And there's going to come a point in time where Jaylen Brown might want more of the ball. You're going to have Kyrie Irving, you're going to have Gordon Hayward taking a lot of shots, doing what they do. And these guys, as good of a team player as you are, you want to see how great you can be at some point in time. As much as you love the city, as much as you love the environment, as much as you love winning with these guys, they might be your brothers. You eventually want to see what you can do. And there's going to come a point in time where at least a couple of these guys are going to end up doing that. So it might be a good idea to look at something like this. They 100% have the assets to go after a guy like Kawhi Leonard if he does, in fact, ask for a trade from the Spurs. I'm not sure if that's going to happen. We haven't really heard too many indications that that's going to happen. Kawhi doesn't really say anything anyways, but if something like that does come about, the Celtics would obviously be the leading candidate for that type of talent, and they definitely have the assets to really go after anybody, whether it's an Anthony Davis, whether it's a Kawhi Leonard, whoever it might be for the most part. They have the assets to do that. I think it's definitely something they should look at. Like I said, you might just have too much talent, and it's a good problem to have. Danny Ainge has done a heck of a job. He has been easily one of the best GMs over the last 10 years, obviously, with the trades he's done. Giving away the Kevin Garnett's, Paul Pierce's at the end of their career for all those draft picks, building that team, obviously winning the championships in 2008, and then building this team going forward, drafting as well as they did, trading away the number 1 pick to get Jason Tatum, the player that they loved all along, who's been playing absolutely insane, leading the team in scoring throughout the playoffs as a rookie, which is unreal. Just an incredible job. And an exciting future for Boston Celtics fans. And on to the next thing, which is tomorrow night, is the Game 1 of the Western Conference Finals, the Houston Rockets versus the Golden State Warriors. We'll talk a little bit about a preview on how I think that series is going to go and that type of thing. It's going to be an interesting series. This is the series that, without question, is almost, in my opinion, is basically the NBA Finals right here. Whoever wins this series is the favorite to win the championship going forward. And I think that's pretty obvious. I think most of you guys would agree with that. But who do I think is going to win the series? We'll talk a little bit about that. It's kind of a toss-up in a lot of ways. But you're looking at 2 superstars on one team, and you're looking at 3, maybe 4 superstars on another team. That's hard to beat. The Golden State Warriors are probably the best dynasty in the last. It's been a long time. They're the dynasty of this generation for sure, no doubt. I don't think we've ever seen a team that's this talented. But back to the question at hand, the Rockets versus Warriors. It's going to be a heck of a series. I can't wait to see the fireworks that's going to happen in this series. I expect James Harden to come out, not play like he did last year in the playoffs. He's going to come out, pedal to the metal, super aggressive. The nice thing is now he doesn't always have to be the general for the team. He can give the ball to Chris Paul, one of the best floor generals that's ever played this game, and let Chris Paul do what he does. Whether Chris Paul is with the second unit at times, whether he's with the first unit at times, it doesn't matter. Last year, plain and simple, James Harden was exhausted. He took so much of the burden on his own shoulders, and it was just such a difficult thing to burden. As great as he is, it wore on him, and it was obviously apparent he was exhausted and he just burnt out towards the end of that series. I don't think it was a will thing. I think it was just pure exhaustion at that point. But now he's got a guy in Chris Paul who can carry that load. Chris Paul, a guy who can hit the 3, a guy who can take over the game if he wants to. Usually doesn't take over the game as much as he should. But definitely an incredible series. I can't wait to see these matchups. Chris Paul versus Steph Curry, Klay Thompson versus James Harden. The list goes on. Kevin Durant versus a lot of the defensive specialists they have. It's going to be, the 3-point spectacle is going to be on full display, no doubt, with this series. But I can't wait. I'm definitely hitting the DVR for this one. Might watch the games twice. Who knows? But it's definitely going to be a fun series. I cannot wait to see. Do I know who's going to win? Who knows? It's an amazing series. I'm going to pick the Warriors. I'm not going to, as long as the Warriors have these 4 players on their team, it's going to be hard to ever pick against them. As long as they're healthy, I can't pick anybody else except for the Warriors. And that's the same thing going into next season, going into the season after that. As long as they have at least these 4 players, their team's pretty incredible. It's going to be hard to pick against them. So I'd say the Warriors in about 6. I think they're going to be too much to handle. I think they just have too much talent. They play too well defensively. But this team's amazing. The Rockets have an incredible team, much better than last year. They've made so many changes and tweaks. All props to Mike D'Antoni for what he's done. James Harden for evolving and adapting with Chris Paul and vice versa. It's been incredible to see. They've been obviously one of the 1 or 2 best teams in the NBA so far, without a doubt. And I can't wait to see going forward what happens with this series. It is going to be a good one. I can't wait. So that's going to be fun. That's tomorrow night, which is Monday, May 14th. You guys can check out this series. I believe this first game is going to be on, I think, TNT. I think they're going to have this series on TNT. But anyways, transitioning into our next thing we're going to talk about, which is going to be a little bit of an NBA draft preview. Mostly, we're just going to talk about DeAndre Ayton, who I'm a huge fanboy of. I'm just going to throw it out there right off the bat. We've got the reason, kind of the main reason we're talking about this is because the NBA draft lottery is coming up on Tuesday. Go Kings. Maybe one day we'll get the ping pong balls to fall in our favor, but probably not. But anyways, whoever's able to get the number 1 pick, I think they're in for an incredible player. I'd be a little bit surprised if anybody who got the number 1 pick did not pick DeAndre Ayton. His name's Luka Doncic. I can't quite say his name. It's a hard name to say, but he's supposed to be an incredible prospect out of Europe as well. But I'd be hard pressed to see anybody not picking DeAndre Ayton, whether it's the Phoenix Suns, who have the number 1, have the highest likelihood of getting the number 1 pick, or the Grizzlies, or the Dallas Mavericks, or the Atlanta Hawks, or the Orlando Magic. I'd be hard pressed to see anybody not picking DeAndre Ayton. This guy is someone I've been in love with throughout this year. This guy is incredible. He's almost a mix between like a Patrick Ewing and a Dwight Howard type player, maybe a Hakeem Olajuwon, Patrick Ewing type talent. I don't want to, kind of enshrine him into the Hall of Fame already, but just based off the talent that he's already shown, this guy's incredible. He can shoot the 3. He's got all the moves in the post. He's absolutely massive. He's got Karl Malone's shoulders. This guy, he looks like a man amongst boys at all times. And that body will definitely translate to the NBA. He's absolutely massive. It's almost like when you watch Joel Embiid out there, you can tell he's just a little bit bigger. He's just a little bit longer. He's just a little bit, in some cases, way better than whoever's guarding him. And it's been the same thing with DeAndre Ayton. He looks like a guy who's playing against high school kids out there at times. Incredible talent. I think the Phoenix Suns, no brainer. They'll definitely take him. I mean, with Alex Len probably hitting free agency and going somewhere else, Tyson Chandler's career is pretty much over with. It's a no-brainer. They need anybody they can get. The Phoenix Suns should definitely pick the best talent that they think is available in the draft, which is obviously DeAndre Ayton, and that's essentially what they should do if they get the number one pick. The Grizzlies, same thing. Grizzlies have Marc Gasol. I think at this point, when your team has had that bad of a season, yes, they were plagued with injuries and things like that, but you have to just pick the best available player, and you'll make it work. Just make it work. Who knows how long Marc Gasol is going to be there? Mike Conley's been kind of injured here and there, but they just got to take the best available player without question. The Mavericks, it's the same thing. Tough season for the Mavericks. Dirk Nowitzki's seasons or career is kind of winding down and things like that. Best player available. Just go with it. And same goes for the Atlanta Hawks. So it's going to be an exciting NBA draft. Definitely looking forward to it. And hopefully the ping pong balls roll in the Kings' way and the Jazz's way coming up here on Tuesday. That would be exciting. The Jazz are actually not in the lottery, but it's going to be awesome going forward to see who the Jazz look forward to. Obviously, they have a great track record of being able to find great talent even later in the draft and things like that. So I'm hoping the Jazz can maybe kind of roll the dice a little bit, go after a player who's kind of a high risk, high reward type player late in the draft, somebody who can score. Might have some issues in other areas, but someone who can score. That's really someone that they need. I think they're pretty cemented defensively, but someone who can score would be nice. Someone who's maybe a project that you can get later on in the first round and things like that. So that pretty much wraps up the podcast for today. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. I appreciate it, and I will see you all next time.